So, Persona 3 is the fourth game in the Shin Megami Tensei spin-off series. It's an edgy game indeed. So, Persona 3 came out in the mid-2000s, late 2000s, and was re-released as FES even later into the 2000s for the PS2, and I'll be playing it on my PS3, as it's on the PlayStation Store now. So, Persona 3 has no big or real connection to the previous Persona games to my knowledge. It's really its own story. So Persona 3 takes place in Japan. In 2009, you play as Your Name Here, a new high school student with purple hair. He makes his way to the school and back to his dorm like a normal Japanese kid. However, at midnight, this really weird thing happens. Everyone seems to be in coffins except a select few amount of people. This is the dark hour. In the dark hour, all these creatures, shadows, demons, whatever they are, come out to attack and prey on people. However, your character is not trapped in a coffin and can freely move around, and so can some of his classmates. All of you together in the dorm, they all know about this dark hour. Well, your party deduces there is no way this dark hour is any good, and this giant tower known as Tartarus shows up in the middle of the city. Well, the party decides to investigate Tartarus and see how they can stop these shadows. The way they fight these shadows are by shooting themselves in the head with a fake gun to summon their other selves. Their personas. I am going to leave the story at that because there is a lot more to the story than meets the eye. It is major spoiler territory, even though this game is over a decade old, but it's up to you to figure it out. The story starts out really slow and relatively boring, to be honest. Like, it's initially interesting, but then nothing happens for probably half the game. But then after that half of the game really just does pick up in terms of story and actually goes somewhere. It does have a few predictable parts, but other than that, I think the story is pretty good. It's not amazing, that's for sure. Nothing compared to the other games in the series, but it's still a decent RPG story. The best part of it really is the characters, as I feel like their arcs and developments are the best part of the story, for sure. They really make the story, because the overall plotline really does not stand out like at all. Other than, let me just shoot myself in the head to summon my persona thing. Anyway, on to the gameplay. There are two types of gameplay in Persona 3. There is the life simulation part of the game, and there is also the RPG type of gameplay. During the day, you live your life as a normal teenager who goes to high school, but once the dark hour happens, you go to Tartarus and become a shadow-killing machine. The RPG part of the game is only during the dark hour, never in the day. You will be spending more of the game in Tartarus than in the life simulation part, so I'll go over Tartarus first. The game is a turn-based RPG. You walk around Tartarus, a randomly generated tower of floors. On these floors there are enemies, and your goal is to get to a certain floor with a boss. You just go up the stairs to get to the boss. Once you engage an enemy, that's when the battle starts. You can do a few things in battle. You can do a physical attack where you use the weapon that you're holding. You can use your persona, which is where you shoot yourself in the head to use a variety of moves. You can switch out of your persona for another one, and it does not take up your turn, but you can only do this once per turn. You can use an item, and lastly you can wait or escape. You also set the tactics for your party members if you want them to heal or an all-out assault. You control your character. The AI controls the other party members. Now, your personas have tons of different moves ranging from fire attacks to water attacks to healing spells to even stat bonuses. The elements and stats are extremely important in this game. This isn't like Pokemon where stat bonuses mean very little to nothing. They're essential to the game. Stat bonuses are obviously required to get anywhere in this game, and the elements as well. Let me explain. Every enemy can be scanned, and once it is scanned, you will be told what its weaknesses are and the strengths. If you hit an enemy with its certain weakness, the enemy goes down. When it goes down, you get another turn. Like, literally, you just get another turn. So it's vital that you hit it with its weakness. When all the enemies are down, you do an all-out attack where you do this giant attack that does a bunch of damage. So these are really good. Now, randomly, when you attack, criticals will show up, just like pretty much every other JRPG. And they do the same thing as if you hit the enemy with its weakness. It's a critical, they go down, you get another turn. This also applies to the enemies. If they hit you with something that you're weak to, or get a critical on you, they get another turn. So it's a two-way street. You really want to abuse these weaknesses, as you will not get like anywhere if in the game without this. The game uses HP and SP. HP is pretty self-explanatory, and SP is basically your mana. your magic. Using your persona uses SP, however some persona attacks use HP instead. If your character dies, then it's game over. It doesn't matter if everyone else is alive, if you die, it's game over. Like I previously said, the stat bonuses and weaknesses are really important. Boosting someone's attack could mean they do 40% more damage, which is critical in boss fights. Making the hit evasion rate go up could mean that they miss 50% of the time now, and that's really important, and I was shocked with how important it actually is. The combat system is actually really in-depth and adds a lot of strategy to the game. The fights against the enemies in Tartarus usually only go on for maybe 3 or 4 turns, and then they're all killed. But the bosses, you need to abuse the weaknesses, and the bosses just take much more time. This is where the main challenge of the game is. A majority of the bosses don't actually have weaknesses, and you seriously have to strategize how to beat some of these bosses. These bosses are freaking hard in Tartarus, and they are not kidding around at all. They will actually just mess you up, sometimes as quick as 1 turn. I will just say that this is not an easy RPG, and you can't just waltz right through or even just grind a bunch. That honestly just won't help. Either of them won't. You really have to strategize, and they just aren't messing around. So that is the battle system. Now what happens after the battle? What happens after is you get XP like a normal RPG. You and your party members can level up, and your persona can level up as well. Let's talk about that persona for a bit. You can get these from a variety of different ways. After most battles, you get shuffle time, where you get to choose one of these cards to get either more XP, a weapon, money, or a persona. Now all your party members have only one persona throughout the entire game, but the main character can change his personas. Each persona has their own moves, their own weaknesses, and abilities. Besides finding personas after battle, the main way to get personas is by fusing. You meet this weird man named Igor in the elevator, and he fuses personas together. When you fuse up to 5 personas, you can fuse up to 5 personas together to get a new one that usually has a mix of all the stats, moves, / abilities. Having multiple good personas is essential to getting anywhere in this game, as you're going to want to have all the elements available at your disposal at all times, and make sure you have very situational personas. Your character leveling up is important, but nowhere near as important as your persona stats. There's also gear in the game, which is pretty conventional and standard for a JRPG, such as weapons, clothes, accessory. While walking around Tartarus, you'll actually see these shadows. If you can hit the shadow with your weapon before they see you, you'll actually get a free turn on them. If they hit you before, I guess if they hit you at all really, they get a free turn. On these randomly generated floors, you will also see chests which contain money or new items to use. But items are pretty standard for the most part in this game. There are some unique ones, but I'm not going to really go over those. Your goal is to find the stairs, like I said earlier, to find the next floor, and then once you get to a certain floor, it'll be a boss. You can also just leave Tartarus whenever you want, once you find a leave point. If your characters are in Tartarus for a long time, they actually become tired, where they do a little less damage and miss a lot. So when this happens, it's best to just leave Tartarus for the night. This brings me to the life simulation part of the game, the other half of the game. So when you aren't exploring Tartarus, you're just living your everyday life like normally. You go to school 6 days a week, and then after school you participate in activities. These include going shopping for new items and clothes, trying to boost some of your core stats like charm, courage, and intelligence, and of course the social links. These are one of the most important parts of the Persona series, introduced here in Persona 3. There are many characters that you can hang out with after school and on Sundays in the game. You have to find these characters yourself, but there are many of them. When you hang out with them, you get to learn all about them and their life, and you interact with them. By hanging out with them more, you increase that social links level. You can get all the way to level 10 with each social link. Not only do you learn about these characters and watch them go through their character arc, but personas that are connected to certain social links will, you see, whenever you fuse personas together, the new persona will have a social link attached to it. If you have done that specific social link, you'll get a huge XP bonus for that persona. This is the best way to get XP for your persona, really. So you really want to do those social links. It's also fun to do them and experience the storylines, as the writing is pretty good actually. That's the main life simulation gameplay. You go around the school, hang out with your friends, build up social links, and then the next day happens. The game has you live literally every single day of the character's life. Every 27 or so days, the full moon will happen. This is a story event where you will fight a special boss and continue the overall story. Then it resets after you beat each boss. You can go to Tartarus pretty much any day in the game, but the story progression comes from the full moon days. However, I will say you do need to finish Tartarus to beat the game. So is that a lot of gameplay to take in? Yeah, it is, but trust me, it meshes pretty well for the most part. Anyway, let's take a quick break from the gameplay and talk about that presentation. The graphics in this game are not very good. This game came out in like 2006, 2005, somewhere around there, and it looks like a 2001 game. The textures look fine enough, and the frame rate was perfect minus one part of the game was Steam. It's really the models and the animation. The models don't look that bad, they look decent enough, but they animate terribly, extremely robotic and awkward looking, even for the mid-2000s, and it wouldn't look out of place on a PS1 game, to be honest. It does not look good for PS2, like a PS2 game in terms of animations. Just look at Final Fantasy X and compare that. That came out years prior as well. This goes for the enemies, which have some really cool and unique designs, but they just animate really poorly, just looking extremely robotic in many aspects. The game also has these animated cutscenes, and I'll just be honest, these look terrible. I'm sure it's just the art style, but not even the art style like I think looks good. I think it just looks like crap. I don't even know why they would choose such a low detail art style, and that's all I have to say about that. The graphics are a mixed bag, to say the least. The sound in the game is actually pretty good. The sound effects are all really good, and some are just really satisfying sound effects, I might add, like leveling up. I will say that the sound effects, they do get a good thumbs up here. The music is pretty good in this game. It's not like absolutely amazing like some of the other games, but it's pretty good. There's some really catchy themes in this game, like the boss themes in particular. They're pretty good. There are many jazz type themes, and it's really relaxing kind of music. A lot of hip hop ones. It's just really all good. I'd say there's no bad tracks in the game, but there are a few forgettable ones. Overall, the music is just really good, and it helps make the game more bearable because the music is so good. The voice acting is surprisingly really good. I totally was not expected this. I totally expected like a pretty bad dub, but surprisingly it was actually really good, and I really liked the voice acting. I thought it was great. The writing was surprisingly pretty good as well, with not that many cringy or just bad parts to it. It was actually good, and I'm like, wow, who would have thought? In general, I'll just say the sound was actually really good and definitely better than the graphics, that's for sure. But now it's time to get to the stuff that I don't like about Persona 3. Now, this is going to take a while because this game has some serious issues with it. When it comes to the life simulation aspect of the game, I really have no issues there. It's all pretty functional. It's all pretty good. All my issues in the game stem from Tartarus and the battle system. The battle system in this game is good and bad. There are a lot of parts to it that I feel are really good and unique, such as the heavy reliance on the elements and strategy. Those parts are really good. However, there are a few glaring issues with this battle system. I barely even know where to start, so I'll start with the biggest issue. You do not control your party members. You give them a tactic, but you don't have direct control of them. This is a massive issue. I'll just be honest, the AI does a lot of stupid stuff in this game, like a lot of stupid stuff, and will consistently have you face palming as to why they're even doing that. Even if you set their tactics to do something, they'll still do stupid actions. Examples include using pointless moves that benefit no one. A common example will be them using attacks that an enemy is resistant to, even if they know it's like resistant to it. You've already scanned the enemy, you can see it's resistant to it, but they attack it with it anyway. A big example is that sometimes your enemies will just down a particular enemy. They won't down it. They'll have a particular ability that will down all the enemies, so that you can do an all-out attack and probably win the battle right there. But instead, they'll just attack the same enemy, keeping that one enemy down, and if you attack an enemy while it's down, it gets back up. So instead of attacking all the enemies, making them all go down because they're all the same enemy, they just attack one. You could have ended the battle right there, but instead they attack the same enemy. If an enemy does not get attacked when they are down, they use their turn to get back up. Same goes for you and your party members. For no reason, the AI will just attack the same enemy instead of downing all the enemies, or just leaving them all down if they can't like get every enemy because they don't have a move. It's just super annoying, and you're just trying. Oh, I don't even want to go there. It's like just because. Oh, no, not being able to control your party members is one of the biggest issues in the game. You want your allies to heal other party members and you, but instead they'll just use the weakest healing item on themselves. Like, what are you doing? And I just usually played the healer since I didn't trust the AI to do it right. It got really frustrating. there is multiple moves from multiple party members that are just borderline useless, and they will use them all the time. Not once in a blue moon. No, we are talking like every other battle they will try to use it. For instance, one character named Mitsuru has a charm spell for her persona, where the enemy will join your team for a short time. It sounds really good, and sometimes it is. The issue is that she hits this move maybe, and I mean maybe, 10% of the time. It's even become a meme in the Persona community with how often she uses it and never hits it, and you can't stop her from using this move. She will just use it, wasting your turn basically. The odds of her hitting this move are just not likely, and she consistently uses it. Even if you turn her on attack, she'll still try to use it. This brings me to my next issue, which is the randomness. There is so much random crap that happens in this game it's honestly just pissed me off a lot. This is in most RPGs where there is a certain random level, but this game is out of control sometimes. What's random? I'll tell you what's random. When your character randomly misses, when the enemy hits a critical on you. Another aspect of the combat is that sometimes when an enemy or you miss a physical attack, you just straight up whiff it. When this happens, you go down, meaning you lose your turn unless you get hit. This is completely random and extremely infuriating when it happens to you. It's not that bad when it happens to a party member, but when it happens to you, it's bad, trust me. And at the end of the game, this pretty much thing, it's just like if you miss your attack and go down like that, there's very little chance you'll live if this happens. You will just get totally owned because you use your turn to get up. And then there's the criticals, which are just random and happen a lot more than the standard RPG. It is completely random whether you get a hit, get a critical. Yes, you can. It's just super annoying. My biggest issue is it just takes control away from the player. I really hate when the game basically throws the dice for you if you live or not, and takes control from the player, where there is very little you could do to prevent your death. It's just unfair, no question. This is coupled with being unable to control your party members that leads to just this feeling like you had no way of getting out of a bad situation. You could just say I suck, and I probably do to an extent, but I know for a fact there was multiple times where there was absolutely no way for me to escape death. For instance, the first full moon boss fight of the game. I get to him, I use my ice persona, which is my strongest persona so far. I use my ice attack as my first attack. And what do you know, the boss reflects it. He reflects it and kills me instantly, and I just lost 30 minutes of game time. There was literally no way for me to know that, because it takes a turn, it takes an entire turn to scan an enemy to find out what they're weak and resistant to. So if I hit them with something else, I would have lived, but I hit them with the ice one. How was I supposed to know that? I said it before and I'll say it again, this game can be really unforgiving and hard. Some of the bosses I just see no way to beat without some way of cheesing them. Like there is just no fair way to beat some of these bosses. You literally just have to cheese it, knocking them over with their weaknesses but not doing an all-out attack so they waste their turn getting up because they'll just own you in one turn if they don't, or finding out which certain bosses can be hit with certain spells like charm or confuse or paralyze. You really just have to cheese it. If you try to run in blind, you probably aren't going to have any fun. You'll probably get owned immediately. This isn't like a couple bosses in the game. This is like more than half the bosses in the game where you just have to cheese them to beat them. Literally abusing the game's mechanics, and that's just not good game design. It's really unfair, and it's just you have to cheese it, and I really dislike having to cheese like battles in a game. Like it's just not fun. It just feels cheap. But that's the only way to beat the bosses. Okay, that covers my issues with the battle system. Now I have issues with Tartarus itself. Running around Tartarus is just not fun in my opinion. Tartarus is massive. It's 200 plus floors of randomly generated stuff. A lot of these floors, in fact, I'd pretty much say all the floors, feel exactly the same, with only slightly different layouts and of course different backgrounds. But they pretty much feel exactly the same. At the beginning, floor 5, floor 6, floor 10. It's not that bad. Try floor 100. Try floor 112. Try floor 254. All are pretty much the exact same floor. The background changes, the floors don't. It's the exact same layout basically every single time. It gets extremely boring, extremely quickly, and it gets just beyond repetitive. It gets old really quick, and you just have to do so much of it. Tartarus could have easily ended at floor 201, but for some stupid reason they add like 50 to 60 extra floors for not even a storyline reason, and it just made me realize how much I hate Tartarus. It gets old really fast and does not hold my interest. The floors just feel identical. There is nothing to distinguish any of them. It's always the same. Just go up to the boss, beat the boss, keep going up. I just came to be really annoyed with Tartarus, everything related to Tartarus, because it's so long, drawn out, which is fine, but I mean, it's not fine when it's the same layout over and over again. Running around Tartarus is really awkward as well. The controls are just really delayed and really awkward. Your character gets stuck on everything, gets caught on every other character, swings his sword super slow. It's not fun at all to navigate Tartarus. Okay, yes, I have even another issue with this game, but this one is kind of a big one. The entrance to the game, like the first part of the game, is just not good, and my first impressions were very low for this game. I'd say the first 5 to 10 hours of this game were just not that great. The story starts out interesting, but very quickly goes nowhere for a very long time. It really doesn't have any big plot points for like half the game, minus 1 or 2 people joining your party. So I was bored with the story pretty fast as nothing was happening. I was absolutely getting mauled by some of these bosses, and there was nothing I could do as it was way too early in the game to make any different personas. I just had to hope I didn't miss and didn't get criticaled. You have Yukari, one of the female leads, and really, she would just miss so much that it just pissed me off. She has the lowest hit rate in the game. They start you with her. She just sucks. She misses all the time. It just lowered my expectations of the game so much. I was ready to just actually rage quit the game as I was getting destroyed by its randomness, and I had really no impact on whether or not I could even beat some of these bosses no matter what I did, on top of a slow plot and Tartarus just being Tartarus and its random crap. However, I stuck with the game, and I gotta say that the game picks up quite a bit after about the 10-hour mark. That's when you've made enough personas and you can really start mixing up the gameplay so you don't have to put up with its random crap, and you have a say in whether you get destroyed or not. And you also get other party members that are much better than the starting ones. The story does pick up eventually, and it goes somewhere as well. It's just my first impressions of the game were terrible. I'm sure it's obvious now because it's a Persona game, but this game is like really long. This game is anywhere from like 55 to like 100 hours, and I know that's a huge margin, but I can say it will take at least 55 plus hours. So some of these issues are exasperated due to the length, like Tartarus being random and boring. Okay, that's it for my issues. I know that was a lot, but I really did have to get that off my chest. If you're at all interested in Persona 3, you need to know about these issues. If you're interested in Persona 3 at all, though, you should really check it out. Despite these many issues that I mentioned, some of them really glaring, I still think the game is actually good. The game, I feel like the game is considered really great online, and the reviews online would lead you to believe that, and the game is solid. The game is solid and it's good, but like, how can I think that with all the shit talking I just did? Because what Persona 3 does good, it does really good. The parts of the battle system, it does good. Like being weak, knocking them over, the strategy, it does it really good. The moves, the elements, it's all really good. And it just puts a unique spin on turn-based JRPG combat. However, what Persona 3 does bad, it does really bad. And occasionally, like really, really bad. So while it does have a fair share of flaws, it still is a good game. Would I recommend it? I have a very, very cautious recommendation for the game. Do not make this your first Persona game, like me, really. Just don't. Don't make this your first one. It will not end well for you. If you played any of the other games, then I can recommend this game. If you like RPGs, play another one first and then play this one. I just would not recommend this one on its own. It's good, but it's not great. It just has some issues. It's just really, overall, I would say it's just alright. Oh yeah, and screw the final boss. The game also has this mode called The Answer, but I'm not even going to bother, where it's just all Tartarus and it's like 30 hours long, so no way. Surprisingly, this game also sparked up no controversy at all, when it's literally about teenagers putting guns to their head and shooting. The bottom line is that Persona 3 is really unique and does really good writing, characters, and sometimes has a really good battle system. Sometimes, though, it's an extremely infuriating, just awkwardly, terribly designed RPG with many bad bosses in it. Either way, it's definitely something I won't be forgetting. It's got good and bad, and it makes for a really unique experience. Bottom line, everyone have a nice night. Don't put guns to your head. It will not summon personas. Have a nice night.